Mamá, 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 ayuda.
Kamila Herrera was 23 years old in October 2015. She lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment in El Poblado, Medellin. The lease was in her name. The rent was paid on time. Her neighbors described her as quiet, polite, and structured in her routines. She had graduated the previous year from EFIT University with a degree in international business. Her academic record was consistent. Professors interviewed during the investigation described her as methodical and forward-thinking. Dr. Beatriz Montoya, who supervised her final academic project, later stated, "Kamila approached decisions with preparation. She evaluated risk. She didn't rush." Kamila was born in 1992 in Medellin. She grew up in Laureles with her mother, Gloria Herrera, and her older sister, Valentina. Her father left the family when she was 11. According to family interviews, Kamila did not maintain contact with him as an adult. Gloria worked as an administrator at a private clinic in the city center. Financially, the household had been stable but modest. Family members described Kamila as protective of her mother, often assisting with paperwork, bills, and appointments. In late 2014, Kamila accepted an entry-level position at a small import consultancy near Parque El Poblado. It was not a high-ranking role, but it placed her in the field she had trained for. By mid-2015, she began applying for international positions. In September 2015, she received an offer from a logistics firm in Madrid. The contract was for 1 year. The departure date was October 19th. According to email records, Kamila responded to the offer within 24 hours. She confirmed her start date. She began arranging housing and paperwork immediately. Her mother later said that Kamila did not hesitate. She had already imagined it, Gloria stated. She knew what she wanted. In the weeks leading up to her departure, Kamila followed a structured preparation schedule. Investigators recovered a handwritten checklist in a notebook, copies of her passport and visa paperwork, a sealed suitcase tagged 4 days before departure, a printed boarding pass for flight AV-18. Her large suitcase remained by the door the night before she left. It had been packed in advance. Friends interviewed after her disappearance described her behavior as consistent with someone preparing for relocation, busy, focused, distracted at times, but not distressed. However, phone and financial records later revealed that Kamila had been managing an additional source of pressure. She had borrowed money earlier in 2015. She had not disclosed the full extent of that debt to her family. We will return to that detail. On October 18th, the night before her flight, Kamila had dinner with her mother in Laureles. The two were seen by restaurant staff between approximately 6 p.m. and 7:15 p.m. Staff later confirmed nothing appeared unusual about the interaction. Security footage shows Kamila returning to her apartment at 7:45 p.m. Her phone connected to her home Wi-Fi shortly afterward. She had a taxi scheduled to pick her up at 3:30 a.m. Her alarms were set. By all measurable accounts, she was prepared to leave. At that stage, there was no indication that she would not board her flight. What investigators would later uncover suggests that by the time she returned home that evening, the situation was no longer entirely under her control. October 18th, 2015. The day before her flight was, by most accounts, ordinary. She had taken the final 2 days from her consultancy job as personal leave. On October 17th, she had attended a farewell dinner organized by her colleagues, nothing large, 6 or 7 people at a restaurant on Calle 10, near her apartment. She had drunk 1 glass of wine. She had been, her colleague Sebastian Rios would recall, present but distracted. He had attributed it to the nerves of departure, the kind of preoccupied energy you expect from someone about to change countries. She had messaged her mother at 11:30 p.m. to say goodnight. Gloria Herrera would later confirm that the message was normal, brief, affectionate, nothing out of the ordinary. On October 18th, the day itself, Kamila did not leave her apartment until mid-afternoon. She cleaned. She went over her documents a final time: passport, contract letter, travel insurance, printed itinerary. She made a checklist. She checked it. In the late afternoon, she took her mother to dinner. A small place in Lauralee, close to where Kamila had grown up, the kind of neighborhood restaurant where the owner knows your order. Gloria would later describe the dinner in detail with the precision of someone who has gone over it many times. They talked about Madrid. They talked about the apartment Kamila would be renting. Small, she had said, but in a good area. They talked about Christmas. Would Kamila come home for Christmas? Almost certainly not the first year. But video calls, every week. Gloria paid for dinner. Kamila tried to argue. Gloria won, as she always did on this particular point. They embraced outside the restaurant at 7 o'clock. Gloria held on longer than usual. Kamila told her she would call when she landed. She did not call when she landed. The next several hours are accounted for only by phone records and a neighbor's testimony. Her neighbor on the same floor, a man in his 40s who would be interviewed briefly by investigators, recalls hearing music through the wall at around 8 p.m., something ambient, low level. Then, silence after 10 o'clock. He did not find this unusual. He assumed, correctly, that the woman next door was trying to sleep before an early morning flight. At 11:47 p.m., Kamila's phone registered a call received. Duration, 4 minutes, 12 seconds. The number was a prepaid mobile registered to no verified account. Investigators would later identify this number as significant. At the time of the call, neither Kamila's family nor investigators yet knew what the call contained or what was said. At 12:41 a.m., now technically October 19th, Kamila sent a cancellation message to the taxi service she had booked. The booking for a pickup at 3 a.m. was canceled via a message that read simply, "I want to cancel the ride, please. I already arranged transport." Investigators would later ask who arranged that transport and when and at whose suggestion. Andrés Villamizar was 25 years old in October 2015. He and Kamila had been classmates at EFIT for 2 years, not close friends but familiar. They had shared a study group during the 3rd semester. They had a common acquaintance in Carolina Suarez. They were connected on several social platforms. They had exchanged messages sporadically over the preceding months. Those who knew them both described the relationship as peripheral. Kamila had a small, tight circle. Andrés was not in it, but he was close enough to it that his name appeared without friction. A familiar name, not a significant one. Until October 15th. On October 15th, 2015, 4 days before Kamila's flight, Andrés sent her a message. Investigators would later obtain the content of this message. It was brief. It expressed congratulations on her Madrid position, on which she had shared publicly. It asked in passing if she had sorted her airport transfer. She replied the same afternoon. She had a taxi booked. He replied within minutes. She could probably find something cheaper. He knew someone, a friend of a friend. Good rates for airport runs. She replied that she was fine. She already had something arranged. She sent a follow-up message 3 days later on October 18th at 10:23 p.m. Investigators believe this was in response to the 11:47 p.m. call, or rather, that the call prompted Kamila to reconsider. The exact sequence is unclear. What is known is this. At 10:23 p.m., Kamila messaged Andrés. She asked if the transport option was still available for that night. Andrés replied, yes. He sent a phone number. At 12:41 a.m., Kamila canceled her taxi. When investigators spoke to Andrés Villamizar in November 2015, he was cooperative, visibly distressed, and consistent. He gave the same account across multiple interviews. He said he had heard from a mutual acquaintance about a driver who offered discounted airport runs. Informal, but reliable, or so he had been told. He had passed the information to Kamila as a casual favor. He had not known the driver personally. He had not known anything about the driver's background. I recommended a cheaper ride, he said. That's all I did. I thought I was helping her. He was not charged with any crime in 2015. He would not be charged with any crime in the years that followed. But investigators did not stop looking at him. What investigators found over the following months was a different kind of picture. In the 2 weeks before Kamila's departure, Andrés's phone had been in contact with a number that investigators had already flagged, a prepaid number associated with a man referred to in case files as RM, a private, unofficial moneylender operating in Medellin. Not a criminal enterprise in the formal sense. A man who lent money, expected it back with interest, and had means of applying pressure when it was not returned. We will come to RM in a moment. The contact between Andres and RM's number was brief. 2 calls over 5 days, each lasting less than 3 minutes. Andres, when asked about these calls, said he did not recognize the number. He said this consistently. The driver's number appeared once in Andres's call log. October 16, 2015. A call lasting 47 seconds, 2 days before Andres offered Kamila the contact. Investigators also found, in November 2015, a bank transfer of 300,000 pesos, approximately $90 at the time, from an account associated with Andres to an account that could not be immediately traced. The transfer was dated October 17, 2015. When asked about this transfer, Andres said it was for a personal debt. He could not produce documentation to support this. He did not elaborate. Andres Villamizer never confessed to any involvement in what happened to Kamila Herrera. He maintained, across years of periodic inquiry, the same fixed account of events. He had recommended a cheaper taxi. He had meant no harm. He did not know the driver. He was not responsible. Whether that account contains the whole truth is a question that has never been answered in a court of law. In January 2015, Kamila Herrera borrowed money. The amount was 4 million Colombian pesos, roughly $1,300 at the exchange rate of the time. The loan came from a private individual, not a registered financial institution. The interest rate was high, not illegal under the technical definitions applied in Colombia at the time, but well above the rates of any formal lender. The terms were structured for short repayment, with penalties applied on a weekly basis for delays. Investigators believe the loan was arranged through an informal network that RM, the moneylender referenced earlier, operated alongside several other individuals in Medellin's informal lending market. RM was known to investigators prior to Kamila's case. He had a history of operating in legal gray areas, issuing loans, collecting debts, occasionally appearing on the periphery of other investigations without being formally implicated in any of them. Why did Kamila borrow the money? The simplest answer, supported by her financial records: she was covering expenses her salary could not. Her consultancy role paid reasonably well for an entry-level position in Medellin, but it did not stretch far. She was paying rent on her apartment, she was paying her own living costs, and she had been, without telling anyone in the family, quietly supplementing her mother's income. Gloria Herrera's salary at the clinic was modest. In late 2014, Gloria had had a health episode. Nothing critical, but an extended absence from work and a course of treatment that insurance did not fully cover. Kamila had stepped in. She had not told her mother where the money came from. Gloria believed it was from savings. She never told me she was struggling. I asked her more than once. She said she was fine. She said it was fine. I believed her. By October 2015, Kamila was behind on her payments to RM by approximately 2 months. The original loan had been partially repaid over the course of the year, but the interest accumulation had kept the balance high, and the recent pressure of her departure, the costs of relocating internationally, the gap between her final Colombian paycheck and her first Madrid salary had made keeping up with payments difficult. Investigators found a message Kamila had sent to an unidentified contact, possibly a friend, possibly a family member, though the recipient account was never clearly established, sometime in early October 2015. The message read, in part, "Just need 2 more months. Once I'm there, it will be fine. I'll pay everything." 2 more months. She was not asking for help. She was not panicking. She was, characteristically, running calculations, projecting forward, identifying a solution, organizing a path through. But the calculation had a variable she could not control. RM was not waiting 2 months. The prepaid phone number that called Kamila at 11:47 p.m. on October 18th Investigators would later link it with near certainty to RM's operational network. They could not definitively confirm it was RM himself on the call. The call was short. The content was never recorded. But the timing, 11 days before her loan payment was due, hours before her departure to a different country, placed the call in a context that investigators found significant. What was said during that call, we do not know. What Kamila did after that call, we know precisely. At 10:23 p.m., she contacted Andres. At 12:41 a.m., where she canceled her taxi. At 12:58 a.m., she left her apartment building. She did not look back. At 1:02 a.m., security footage from a camera on the adjacent block shows her standing at the curb. A dark sedan pulls up. She gets in. The driver is never clearly identified. The car is never clearly identified. The plates, partially visible in one frame of the footage, lead investigators to a vehicle, but the registration is fraudulent, temporary paperwork, possibly false plates. The car pulls away at 1:04 a.m., heading south on Avenida El Poblado. The man who drove the dark sedan on the night of October 18th into October 19th, 2015, has never been identified. This is not for lack of effort. Investigators worked the vehicle registration for weeks. The paperwork attached to the plates, temporary documentation issued by a transit office in another municipality, led to a name that, when pursued, proved to be that of a real person who had not owned a vehicle in several years. The paperwork was fraudulent. The real person, when located, had no knowledge of their identity being used. They had not reported the discrepancy because they had not known. The vehicle itself, a dark mid-size sedan, likely a Chevrolet or similar, was never found. The phone number Andres had passed to Kamila, the number associated with the driver, was active until October 19, 2015. After that date, it went silent. What happened in the car is reconstructed from the following: Kamila's phone records, a cell tower ping, the call to her mother, and the silence after it. The normal route from El Poblado to Jose Maria Cordova International Airport takes between 35 and 50 minutes, depending on time of night, via the Eastern Tunnel and the Las Palmas Highway. At 1 a.m. with no traffic, it should take approximately 35 minutes. Kamila's phone registered a cell tower ping at 1:09 a.m., consistent with the normal route, Las Palmas, heading east toward the tunnel. At 1:14 a.m., it registered a second ping. This ping was not on the Las Palmas corridor. It was to the north of the expected route, on a road leading into the corregimiento of Santa Elena. Kamila noticed. At 1:17 a.m., she called her mother. Gloria Herrera was saying, "Kamila," she said, "Mama," and then she said, "Ayuda," and then the call ended. I called back immediately. It rang. No one answered. I called 7 times. At first I thought it was a bad connection. I thought she had lost signal in the mountains. I told myself that for a while. The call lasted 8 seconds. Between the call and the last registered activity on Kamila's phone, a cell tower ping at 1:23 a.m., still in the Santa Elena area, 6 minutes passed. After 1:23 a.m., Kamila's phone registered no further activity. It was never found. The engine idling. A stop. Silence. Darkness. Gloria Herrera could not reach her daughter. By 2 a.m., she had called Kamila's phone 11 times. By 3 a.m., she had called Avianca's passenger services to ask if Kamila had checked in for the 5 a.m. flight. She had not. At 4:15 a.m., Gloria called Valentina in Cali. Valentina, who would later describe the call as the call I had been afraid of my whole life without knowing it, drove to Medellin the same day. A missing persons report was filed with the Medellin Metropolitan Police on the morning of October 19, 2015. The officer who received the report noted the circumstances: scheduled international flight, unexplained absence, no contact, and flagged it for early follow-up rather than the standard waiting period. In Colombia, in 2015, cases involving young women and unexplained disappearance were not treated with bureaucratic patience, particularly when the circumstances suggested something beyond voluntary absence. The investigation began quickly by the standards of such cases. Within 48 hours, detectives had reviewed the building security footage, obtained Kamila's phone records, and begun the process of identifying the vehicle. Within 72 hours, they had located the taxi cancellation message, identified the number Andres had provided, and spoken with Andres Villamizar for the first time. It was within this first interview that Andres gave the account he would never deviate from. I recommended a cheaper ride. The investigation expanded outward in the way investigations do, through phone records, through financial data, through interviews with anyone who had been in contact with Kamila in the weeks before her disappearance. It was this process that first surfaced the loan. A number in Kamila's phone records, the prepaid number, RM's network, that appeared with no contact name assigned, flagged because of its pattern of contact in the months preceding October 2015 and the sharp increase in contact frequency in the days before her departure. Detectives followed the number. The number, as they would find, was part of a cluster of prepaid devices used in rotation, a common operational practice for informal lenders who expected periodic contact with law enforcement. By the time investigators identified RM as a person of interest, the number had been inactive for 12 days. RM himself had by then become difficult to locate. On October 23, 2015, 4 days after Kamila Herrera left her apartment building on Calle 8 Sur in El Poblado, her body was found in a rural area approximately 5 kilometers from the perimeter of José María Córdoba International Airport. She was identified that afternoon. The forensic examination established a time of death consistent with the early morning hours of October 19th, the window between 1:23 a.m. when her phone last registered activity and dawn. Her carry-on bag was not recovered, her phone was not recovered, her passport was not with her. In the inside pocket of her coat, investigators found a single document that had survived, her boarding pass, Avianca AV-18, Medellin to Madrid, seat 24A. Boarding time, 4:20 a.m., October 19th, 2015. She had kept it in her coat pocket. The cause of death was determined by autopsy. The details are part of the formal case record. They are not included here. What is documented is this. Her death was not natural. It was deliberate, and it occurred within a short distance of where the driver's cell tower ping had last been registered on the night of her disappearance. Gloria Herrera was notified on the afternoon of October 23rd. Valentina was with her. The interview they gave months later to a Colombian television journalist lasted 11 minutes before Gloria asked to stop. She stopped mid-sentence, not because she was crying, she was not at that moment crying, but because, she explained, she had run out of things to say that felt equal to what she was trying to describe. "I keep thinking about the suitcase," she said before the interview ended. It was already packed. She had already packed. The investigation into Kamila Herrera's death ran for the better part of 2 years in any active sense and technically remains open. RM, the moneylender, disappeared from Medellin within days of Kamila's body being found. The apartment that investigators located had been vacated in a hurry but not carelessly. There was no evidence of panic, but the precision of the departure suggested preparation. His prepaid phones went permanently inactive. Cash withdrawals from accounts associated with him had begun in the days before the discovery, the financial equivalent of closing tabs before leaving a restaurant. By the time investigators had a formal basis to detain him, he was not in Medellin. He has never been located. The vehicle used on the night of October 18th to 19th was never found. The fraudulent paperwork associated with the plates was traced back to a transit office where an employee, later dismissed but not prosecuted for reasons of insufficient evidence, had issued multiple sets of temporary documentation with irregular oversight. The employee stated that this was an administrative error. Investigators believed otherwise, but could not prove otherwise. The driver, referred to in case files only by a physical description derived from the partially visible security footage, male, adult, no further reliable characteristics, was never identified. No fingerprints were recovered from any surface attributable to the vehicle because the vehicle was never found. No DNA was recovered for comparable reasons. The case file on the driver remains the thinnest section in the investigation. Andrés Villamizar was interviewed 3 times over the course of the investigation. He was never arrested in connection with the case. He was never charged with homicide. Investigators applied pressure, the bank transfer, the phone contact with RM's number, the call log entry for the driver's number. But pressure is not evidence of intent, and intent in a case of this kind is extraordinarily difficult to establish without cooperation from one of the primary parties. RM could not be found to cooperate or be confronted. The driver could not be found at all, and Andrés would not move from his account. Andrés Villamizar, translated from Spanish. I recommended a cheaper taxi. That's what I did. I thought I was helping her get to the airport. I have to live with the fact that it went wrong. But I didn't know. He continues to say this. He's still saying it now. In 2017, Gloria Herrera gave a longer interview to a Medellin newspaper, the first in which she spoke at any length about the years since her daughter's death. She spoke about the Spanish firm in Madrid that had sent a letter of condolence in November 2015. A thoughtful letter, she said, written by someone who had clearly known about Kamila's work in advance of meeting her. She spoke about the Sunday calls with Valentina that had continued after Kamila's death, filling the same time slot that had previously been occupied by calls with Kamila. She said this had been Valentina's idea and that she had initially resisted it and that she was now glad of it. She spoke about the boarding pass. I asked if I could have it, she said. They told me it was evidence. Eventually, they returned it to me. I have it at home. I don't display it, but I know where it is. She was asked what she thought had happened, whether she believed justice was possible for Kamila's case. She paused for a long time before answering. I think, she said, that the people who know what happened know exactly what happened. I think some of them sleep fine anyway. I think that is the part I find hardest to accept. Not the not knowing. The knowing that someone, somewhere, knows, and it doesn't cost them anything. Kamila Herrera's apartment Sur in El Poblado was accessed by investigators on October 24, 2015, the day after her body was found. Her mother had a spare key. The apartment was, by every account, exactly as Kamila had left it. Neat, organized, ready for someone who was supposed to return. The desk by the window was clear. The books on the shelves were in their places. The print above the desk, the geometric pattern she had bought because she needed something on the wall, was straight. The small kitchen was clean. A single cup had been rinsed and left upside down on the drying rack. In the hallway, near the door, where she had placed it the night before, the large suitcase, sealed, tagged, Kamila Herrera, Destino, Madrid. The tag was still attached. Kamila Herrera was 23 years old. She was scheduled to board Avianca Flight AV-18 from José María Córdoba International Airport at 5 o'clock in the morning on October 19, 2015. She had packed her suitcase 4 days early. She had made a list and checked it. She had said goodbye to her mother outside a restaurant in Lorelle and let herself be held for longer than usual. She had been ready. Instead, her journey ended 5 kilometers from the airport, on a road in the mountains above a city she had always planned to leave. Not permanently, not forever, but in the way of someone who intended to come back having become, in the time away, more fully what they were already becoming. She did not get to do that. The case of Kamila Herrera remains classified as unresolved by the Medellin Metropolitan Prosecutor's Office. RM has not been located. The driver has not been identified. Andrés Villamizar has not been charged. The vehicle has not been found. The investigation is technically open. In practice, it has not moved in years. Some cases are solved, others simply stop.